Hello everyone, the motion picture AvAtAr. The story opens with a broad shot high across the treeline of a rich, green rainforest. Intercut is a succession of pictures of Jake Sawyer, Sam Worthington, an injured conflict veteran and previous Marine. He awakens in a monster spaceship en route to Pandora, a thickly forested Earth-like moon circling Polyphemus, a Goliath blue planet like Jupiter. He is one of countless travelers, all awakening after just about 6 years of cryosleep on the way to Pandora. Floating out of his resting unit in 0G, he is tended by the boat's staff. He opens his storage, which is checked. Jake lets us know that he has a departed twin sibling Tom, a researcher who was to be important for an undeniable level program managed by corporate and military tacticians to concentrate on the climate and occupants of Pandora. Since Jake and his sibling are a careful hereditary match, he was given a one-of-a-kind open door, assume control over his siblings' agreement with the corporate military element and travel with as little luggage as possible years away to a station on the recently witnessed world, Pandora. Recognizing the thoughts of being free and having a new beginning, Jake consents to the arrangement as his sibling's body is incinerated. Presently being shipped from the spaceship to Pandora through a van, Jake is one of many troopers and regular citizen staff going to land on Pandora, a few 4.3 light a long time from Earth. We get perspectives on the base and its development and monstrous mining machines uncovering the dirt in a huge quarry as Jake contemplates his new job. The travelers are completely taught to wear a full-face breathing cover since the environment of the planet won't uphold human existence. 20 seconds of openness to the noxious air of the planet causes obviousness, with death happening around 4 minutes after the fact. While different travelers land and make their most memorable strides onto the base, called Damnation's Door, which is encircled by an enormous border wall, Jake follows them in his wheelchair, procuring the moniker, Feasts on Wheels, from a couple of haughty Marines. He recognizes through voiceover that he lost the utilization of his legs during one of his deployments on the planet, and keeping in mind that a spinal injury like his can be fixed, it takes cash, which is difficult to get in the current economy. Jake goes promptly to a tactical instructions where Colonel Miles Quaritch, Stephen Lang, is tending to the gathered troopers and a couple of regular citizens who have gone along. He reminds them they're not in Kansas anymore, and he enlightens them regarding Pandora's native populace, the Na'vi. Quaritch, wearing a chunky of scars in favor of his head, says they are difficult to kill, and essentially everything out there will attempt to kill you. Furthermore, while he must keep his kin alive, he says he won't prevail in this assignment, not with every one of you. In the event that they wish to make due, he proceeds, they should follow Pandora rules. Jake goes to a science lab where he meets scientist Norm Spellman, Joel David Moore, and Dr. Max Patel, Dalip Rao, two individuals from the Symbol program. As Jake gets his most memorable glance at his own symbol, we find out about the actual program. People can't inhale Pandora's air, however the Symbol program empowers a human to interface with their own symbol, a hereditarily reared human Na'vi half-breed, and capability as though they were a Na'vi local. In his symbol body, Jake will actually want to walk in the future and inhale the air. The symbols seem to be their human drivers. At the point when Norm tells Jake his symbol appears as though him, Jake significantly says it seems to be his dead sibling. Jake and Norm enter the science office pretty much the time Dr. Beauty Augustine, Sigourney Weaver, the program's science lead, stirs in an exceptionally planned unit that connects her to her symbol and flips open the top. Norm tells Jake he hears she loves, establishes better compared to individuals. She emerges from her unit and chats in Na'vi with Norm. Happy with Norm's order of the language, she goes to Jake. She lets him know she wants his sibling Tom, the PhD who prepared 3 years for the Pandora mission. However, she needn't bother with Jake since Jake has no lab experience and has never been connected to a symbol. Jake attempts to infer that he's a speedy student, however, the cranky effortlessness isn't intrigued. Beauty stomps off to the base's control space to defy Parker Selfridge, Giovanni Ribisi, base administrator and agent for the Assets Advancement Organization (RDA), an enterprise that regulates all military and other staff on the state. He tells her Jake will act as a security escort in her group while they're in the world's surface. Elegance tells Parker she wants a specialist, not a Marine dropout. She questions Jake will be of any utilization to her natural exploration. Parker answers, saying he deviates, saying they gotten lucky with Jake. Since he's an ideal hereditary counterpart for the symbol expected for his twin sibling, they can involve his tactical abilities in a symbol body toward the general goal of the activity, mining the mineral unobtainium, a strong wellspring of energy that sells for a large number a kilo, and can take modest power back to a perishing earth. Parker advises Elegance one method for achieving this goal is to win the hearts and brains of the locals, to get their participation. Beauty contends that a significant number of the Navy have been killed by the military under the sponsorship of Selfridge's activity. Back in the lab next morning, Jake and Norm are connected to their symbols interestingly. Jake, in his symbol, awakens in an alternate room with different symbols and staff. Inside a couple of seconds, Jake is making his overseers anxious in light of the fact that, excited with his capacity to move his legs once more, he is moving excessively fast and attempting to walk, whenever he first has had the option to do as such since turning into a paraplegic. The human lab laborers can't stop him. A Navi is north of 10 feet tall, in some cases more like 12 feet, and far more grounded than people. At the point when his long tail pushes over instruments, a staff part advises him to pause and rests once more. Jake disregards him and blasts out of the room and into the sunlight. He ends up in an entertainment region where different symbols are playing sports and staff, in their defensive stuff, are performing different obligations. Jake meets Beauty's symbol, who prefer tempered over human elegance, goes with Jake to the dormitory where he is in the long run urged to rest. Before he rests to rest, Jake investigates his brain line, a long extremity that seems to be a plait of hair. Toward the finish of his line is a bunch of stored away rings. At the point when the symbol rests, the connection is broken and Jake himself stirs. Jake later meets Trudy Chacon, Michelle Rodriguez, a resigned Marine pilot with whom he'll endure half a month becoming accustomed to his symbol and investigating Pandora. Jake will act as the entryway heavy armament specialist on her group. Jake meets with Col Quaritch, who is lifting loads. The colonel tells Jake he's looked into his administration record and was dazzled with what he achieved on a portion of his visits, remembering one for Venezuela. The colonel cautions Jake about the risks looking for him on Pandora. He likewise expresses his conviction that the symbol program is a joke, yet that it offers a chance for a remarkable surveillance mission, on the off chance that Jake can figure it out and let the colonel know what he needs to be familiar with the locals, how to convince them to create some distance from the unobtainium metal stores and how to hit them hard in the event that they won't. The colonel will make sure that Jake gets the medical procedure he wants to recover utilization of his legs. The colonel moves into an AMP suit, a bipedal exoskeleton utilized for missions on Pandora, and moves off. Relinked with his symbol, Jake flies over Pandora's surface in Trudy's gunship, alongside Beauty, Norm, and others. The group lands in a woods, where Elegance and Norm start to take tests of the vegetation and make estimations. Jake is occupied by his environmental factors and meanders into a field of helicorydian blossoms, which are very tall and psychologist at Jake's touch. Inconvenience shows up when a Titanothera, a vigorously heavily clad, hammerhead animal, defies Jake. Effortlessness orders him to hold fast and not shoot, or, more than likely, the creature will lash out and charge. In any case, his protective layer is excessively thick for weapons to have any impact. Jake effectively holds his ground, however, simply because another monster, a jaguar-like Thanator, has moved toward him from behind and has caused the Titanotheres to withdraw and encompass their young. The Thanator then goes to Jake. Beauty advises him to run, and he's sought after by the Thanator in a pursuit that isolates Jake from his team. He loses his weapon and is brought down by the creature, yet liberates himself by delivering his knapsack. At last, the pursuit prompts a cascade, where Jake leaps to somewhere safe, leaving the Thanator thundering above him. Jake's team looks for him, yet Trudy says they'll need to get back to base since night operations are not permitted. Elegance says he won't last the evening. It's presently night and we see Jake honing a long stick into a lance. Jake is being watched from a higher place, this time by a navvy. The navvy points a bolt at Jake and is going to shoot, however rules against it when little, ethereal, brilliant animals land on her bow. Later we learn they are, exceptionally unadulterated spirits, otherwise called the seeds of Iva, the Navis all-strong god. The toxopholite withdraws. Jake is followed by a pack of viper wolves. He plunges the finish of his lance into a flammable pitch-like fluid. He lights the end and uses it as a light against the viper wolves, who encompass him, teeth exposed, jaws snapping. The creatures assault Jake, he retaliates, kills some, and is brought somewhere near others. The toxopholite who was noticing Jake joins the fight on his side. She kills some viper wolves and makes the rest escape. She gently finally gives some closure some crying injured creatures and expresses supplications over them. Jake endeavors to say thanks to her for assisting him with warding off the assailants. She meets his thanks with disdain, lets him know this is his shortcoming, that they didn't have to pass on, and that he ought to return to where he came from. Jake inquires as to whether she has that impression, why she helped him. You have serious areas of strength for a no apprehension, she makes sense of. Yet, inept. Jake endeavors to follow his hero up into a tree, requests her assistance, and says he needs to learn. He is shocked and told to return, that sky individuals can't be instructed. All of a sudden, the seeds of Iva return and begin to arrive on the apprehensive Jake. He asks what they are. Exceptionally unadulterated spirits, she answers, and Jake is covered by them, establishing a connection with his buddy. At the point when the seeds float off, she yields and advises him to accompany her. As Jake attempts to stay aware of his hero, Neytiri, Zoe Saldana, he is felled by a bolo tossed by a watch of Omaticayan champions. Their chief is Sute, Laz Alonso, next in line to the lofty position and the man Neytiri is supposed to wed. Neytiri prevents them from hurting Jake by telling them, there has been a sign from Iva. Sute tells his men to bring him along to Tashi, father, inexact spelling, and Iva, mother. Jake is introduced to Neytiri's folks, Atukan, West Studi, and more at CCH Pounder, who are the ruler and sovereign of the clan, separately. Jake lets the seniors know that he is a championer, dreamwalker, and his expectation is to gain from them. Moat pricks Jake's chest and tastes his blood, declaring it is the desire of Iva for him to live with the Omaticaya, and for Neytiri, but hesitantly, to be his educator in their ways and customs. After a custom social occasion, Jake is brought to his bed, a leaf high up in the home tree that encompasses him like a case. As he nods off, human Jake is restored. At morning chow, every one of the researchers, including Beauty, are centered around all that Jake needs to say. Norm appears to be extremely frustrated and dreary. He was Elegance's unique decision to security with the Omaticaya. Indeed, even the military and corporate reps have warmed to Jake. Hometree sits on a huge store of unobtainium, so Jake has all the earmarks of being their absolute best at persuading the Omaticaya to move or encouraging the colonel on the most proficient method to compel them to do as such. He's educated that he has 3 months to accomplish his objective before the tactors show up. The following scenes rotate around symbol Jake's preparation with Neytiri and human Jake's reports on his encounters through the videolog he directs after each day's movement. He bonds with his dire horse, a significant creature to the Na'vi. Jake should figure out how to mount the creature and associate his brain line to its receiving wire. Human Jake keeps on covering the Homitiri's foundation and other Na'vi subtleties. Jake struggles with figuring out how to control his dire horse and is frequently alluded to as Eskekoeng, scorned by Neytiri and Sute, which he lets us know signifies dold. Jake reports back to the Colonel and Selfridge about the Omatikaya's home, the Goliath home tree. Under it is a huge store of unobtainium. Jake educates them regarding the construction of the 1,000-foot-tall tree. Queret sees a chance to obliterate the tree, yet Jake demands he be permitted to haggle with the Na'vi and persuade them to leave. Detecting that Jake is being controlled by Queret, Selfridge and the remainder of the tactical part of the mining activity, Effortlessness chooses to take her activity out of Evade. She moves them into the Glory Be Mountains, a distant district of colossal, drifting islands that are sacrosanct to the Na'vi and are likewise rich in unobtainium. Effortlessness needs her turf away from the RDA authorities and military sorts at the base. In his next videolog, Jake examines his language illustrations and says his experience with the Na'vi is like field stripping a weapon. Enough redundancy and you can't resist the urge to learn it. This is intercut with scenes of his kept preparation with Neytiri, who shows him the Na'vi Woods Association. She lets Jake know that all energy is acquired and one day we need to give it back. Jake appears to fathom this, and as he says a request for a creature he chased and recently killed, Neytiri says that he is prepared for a significant soul-changing experience, to bond with and ride at Declan, a flying mountain banshee. To arrive at the banshee's settling grounds, Jake should go with Neytiri, Sute and 2 other Na'vi learners to the most noteworthy locale of the Thank Heaven Mountains. A few factors, the level, the savagery of the untamed banshees, make this a hazardous example, yet Jake's absence of dread and effective security with his banshee gain him the hesitant appreciation of the Na'vi heroes present, even Sute. He makes the bond with the ringlets in his line, and as he rides the flying creature he comments that he's a sorry horseman but rather he was destined to do this. Jake, Neytiri, and the others ride together to the Tree of Spirits, the most hallowed spot to the Na'vi. While flying on a hunting foray, Jake and Neytiri are unexpectedly sought after and gone after by an animal referred to the Na'vi as Toruk, a monster and splendidly shaded flying mountain banshee with dangerous goals toward all that flies. Neytiri says its name signifies, last shadow. The Toruk's shadow, once seen, is typically the last shadow one at any point will see, as its assault is quite often lethal. Back at Home Tree, Neytiri shows Jake the skeleton of a forerunner of the present Toruk. She lets him know the last individual to ride a Toruk was hers granddad, who utilized the creature to join the 5 Na'vi clans in a period of extraordinary distress. Such an individual would procure the title Toruk Mato, Rider of the Last Shadow. At the point when Jake returns to his human structure, it's reasonable he's been changed by this most recent experience, for he expresses, out there is this present reality, in here is the fantasy. The Colonel approaches him to let him know his main goal is achieved and he's to get back to Earth that day. Furthermore, great to his promise, the Colonel has set up for Jake to seek the treatment he really wants to recapture utilization of his legs. Jake wishes to postpone his takeoff since he says he's right at the place where he's to be started into the clan and acknowledged as one of them, and afterward would have the status to haggle with the Na'vi to migrate. The Colonel assents. Jake goes to a Na'vi function, where he learns the Na'vi accept that each individual can be conceived 2 times. Neytiri drives Jake to a position of partition, the Tree of Voices, where they utilize their lines to bond with the tree. Neytiri tells Jake he can make a bow from the tree, furthermore, that he can pick a lady. Jake lets Neytiri know that he has previously picked her, and she says that she has picked him. They rest together under the tree and Jake awakens back in the lab. In the first part of the day, Neytiri stirs to falling trees, then the presence of tactors. Fighters are progressing as the woods falls around Neytiri, who is hauling and conveying Jake to somewhere safe and secure. At their remote spot, Jake is preparing to interface with his symbol, and when he at last restores, Jake moves onto one of the tactors and attempts to stop it, in the long run crushing its camera framework and drawing some gunfire. Other Na'vi champions show up, while the Colonel, auditing films back at the base, perceives Jake in his symbol structure as the individual who attempted to stop their main goal. The tactors proceed with their activity, clearing out the consecrated ground. At Hometree, the Na'vi need war. Elegance and Jake contend against it. There's a serious discussion. Sute attempts to kill Jake, envious at having discovered that Jake and Neytiri are mated for life when he and Neytiri were pledged. Jake pronounces he is a Na'vi and merits the option to talk. Out of nowhere, both effortlessness and Jake's symbols fall oblivious as the connections among them and their human structures are suddenly broken by the irritated Colonel, who captures Jake for attempting to stop the tactors. Elegance and Jake go head-to-head with RDA and military metal. Elegance uncovers that Pandora's trees structure an organization that has more brain associations than exist in the human mind and that the Na'vi can take advantage of that organization. Subsequently, the Omaticaya won't ever leave Hometree. Parker and the Colonel talk about choices. He will send off an assault on Hometree and use gas bombs to drive out the Na'vi. Jake presses to be permitted to get back to the Omaticaya to attempt to persuade them to leave, and he's allowed 1 hour to accomplish that goal. Jake and Elegance are not invited back. Neytiri rejects Jake. Both Jake and Elegance are bound and abandoned by the Omaticaya, who are getting ready to battle against the people, who have shown up in an enormous armada of flying boats. The armada dispatches gas canisters into Hometree and the encompassing region. As the fight heightens, the vast majority of the weaponry is designated at the root construction of Hometree, which is brought down by a progression of blasts and weighty mounted guns. Numerous Omaticaya are killed. Moath liberates Jake and Beauty and requests that they save the clan. Jake shows up and is dismissed again by Neytiri when he attempts to comfort her. Neytiri's dad Atukan is killed by an enormous piece of shrapnel. His final request is for Neytiri to take his hallowed bow and expect initiative of their kin. The obliteration appears to be an ending, and, out of nowhere, Jake and Elegance return to their human bodies and are quickly positioned apprehended for treachery. Norm is likewise captured for attempting to keep warriors from handicapping their symbol structures. The Na'vi accumulate at the Tree of Spirits. Trudy shows up at the cell which holds Jake, Beauty, and Norm. She tricks their gatekeeper by saying she believes that nothing should do with them, just to take out the watchman a moment later. As they plan to escape the base, Elegance is shot and injured by the Colonel. The group flies Trudy's boat to the distant lab in the drifting mountains and they take a case to one more spot in the timberland. Jake gets back to his symbol body. The confident get-together with the Omaticaya isn't to be, at first. Jake is an outsider. So he goes with an intense choice. He understands that to recover the trust of the Na'vi, he needs to take things to a more significant level. He gathers his Banshee and embarks to find the Toruk. His system is basic, however can undoubtedly bring about death. Jake accepts that the Toruk never searches for an assault above himself and accordingly he can be moved toward that way. Jake leaps off his Banshee and onto the rear of the Toruk. We next see him show up riding the Toruk at the Tree of Spirits in an Omatikayan function. Jake has effectively reinforced with the Toruk. The Omaticaya are shocked to see their most prominent legend work out as expected. Jake descends and clears his path through the horde of Navi, who, part before him. At the point when he arrives at Neytiri, each holds out an arm to the next and she says, "I see you." Sute, who is presently clan pioneer, yields Jake's new job of Toruk Mato. He agrees Jake much regard. Jake persuades Moat to help Effortlessness, who is passing on. Moat starts the arrangements, which include getting Elegance's human and symbol bodies set up at the Tree of Spirits. The thought is to move Beauty's awareness to her symbol forever. Moat spreads the word that Beauty should go through the eye of Iva, and that the Incredible Mother could decide to let her pass through to her symbol self, or she could select to have Effortlessness stay with her. The custom isn't effective, however, before she bites the dust, Effortlessness lets Jake know that she has seen Iva. Jake, shattered and incensed, talks as Toruk Mato and says now is the right time to make an impression on the sky individuals that this is the Navis territory. However, to do as such, they initially should go to every one of the Navi factions to request that they come and battle as one. Sute will be the Omatikayan's new group pioneer and will likewise assist with mobilizing different factions to battle with them. The human military have gotten the implantation of Navi into the region, from a couple hundred to 2,000 soon. Going on like this, the colonel says as he tends to his soldiers, the Navi will before long add up to 20,000, so, all in all their border will be overwhelmed. As opposed to allow that to occur, he proceeds, they should organize a precautionary assault while they actually can. They will probably transform a space transport into the transporter of an enormous bomb. Their objective is the Tree of Spirits, and the assault is made arrangements for 0600 the following day. That's what they trust. Assuming they annihilate the Tree of Spirits, the Navi will disappear and never approach this spot from now onward. Jake is in the middle of mobilizing the Omaticaya. At the Tree of Spirits, he utilizes his line to bond with the tree and requests that Iva investigate Effortlessness recollections, focusing on that mankind killed their mom, Earth, the element that safeguards the equilibrium of life. Neytiri shows up and tells Jake that Iva doesn't favor one side. Querach masses his armada, generally as insurance for the Valkyrie transport. The bombship and the armada advance toward the Tree of Spirits. The unified Navi force starts to show up from the sky and on the ground. Jake on his Toruk, Sute, and different fighters take part fighting with the tactical airplane, fundamentally Scorpion attack ships. Setbacks mount on the two sides. The gunships have unparalleled capability, yet are no counterpart for the Declans, who grasp them and crush them against one another. Jake, riding the Toruk, is sought after and shot at by Querach's Dragonfly transport. Trudy shows up and starts shooting at the Colonel's Order transport. Neytiri's Banshee is killed. Norm's symbol is mortally injured and he hops back to his human structure. Sute takes on the bombship and is killed in the endeavor. Trudy kicks the bucket when her boat is obliterated in a hail of gunfire from Querach's Dragonfly. Neytiri watches this activity from the beginning. Jake endeavors to contact Sute and is ineffective, just like his endeavor to arrive at Trudy. In the meantime, the bombship surrounds the Tree of Spirits. Jake tells Neytiri by means of communicator to withdraw from the battle. Unexpectedly, through what's left of the encompassing woods, a legion of Titanotheres, Pandora's vigorously defensively covered dinosaur-like creatures, shows up and draws in the Earth powers. They immediately destroy two infantry and fighters in AMP suits. Excited that Iva has heard Jake's request for help, Neytiri rejoins the battle with numerous other of Pandora's species behind her. When a Thanator shows up neighboring, it bows to her compliantly. Jake and his Toruk take to the sky to defy the bombship as the Tactical's ground powers retreat in disorder. Drawing nearer from a higher place, Jake explosives the bomb ship. It crashes on fire and blasts well away from the Tree of Spirits. Jake likewise tosses explosives into weak pieces of the Order transport. It starts to torch and go. Call. Quaritch gets into an amp suit and bounces liberated from the Order transport before it crumbles in a chunk of blazes. He winds up at the transitory camp set up by Elegance. In the camp, Jake is inside his symbol case. Quaritch, set on killing Jake, is presently gone after by a Thanator that Neytiri had fortified with and ridden to the site. With the guide of his AMP suit, the Colonel kills the Thanator and Neytiri is caught under it. Before the Colonel gets an opportunity to kill Neytiri, Jake shows up in his symbol. The two take part in battle, the Colonel in his AMP suit and Jake as his symbol, equipped just with a piece of line. Jake crushes the suit's plastic shade, the Colonel pops it off, wears a breathing cover, and, before he moves off toward the designs that house the units, asks Jake how it feels to have sold out his race. You believe you're one of them? Time to awaken, he insults, as he crushes into the portable lab, searching for Jake's unit, expectation on obliterating it and human Jake. The fight resumes. Jake is gotten by an arm of the AMP suit and dangles from his line before the Colonel. In the interim, Neytiri has nearly liberated herself. The Colonel currently draws Jake nearer to him and goes after his blade, aiming to complete Jake by cutting his throat. Out of nowhere, Neytiri shoots a bolt at the Colonel, spearing him through the focal point of his chest. The Colonel, faltering, can't proceed with his assault on Jake. Neytiri's subsequent bolt stops right close to the first. It acquires the Colonel the AMP suit to the ground. Notwithstanding, much harm has been finished to the lab, which is spilling in the planet's noxious environment. Human Jake is conscious, however, experiencing issues both breathing and attempting to get a cover on. Neytiri shows up and helps Jake on with his veil. According to supporting human Jake, I see you. It's whenever they first have seen each other up close and personal. Back at Damnation's entryway, the vast majority of the Exis people are being walked into a van to be sent back to Earth. In any case, a limited handful Earth individuals, like Norm and Dr. Patel, are welcome to remain on Pandora. Jake closes down in his last videologue, where we discover that he has decided to move his awareness to his symbol for good. In a function like effortlessness, Jake goes through the eye of AvAtAr, also, awakens in his symbol with Neytiri looking after him.